Hey, this is Brandon.
And this is Drew.
Welcome to Crushin' It. We're going to talk to people you know about stories you may not. Hometown hustle, big time stories, weekly from Owensboro.
Let's get to Crushin' It.
Hey, welcome back to the Crushin' It podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, my co-host, Drew.
Yes, and today we have a very special guest with a very cool story that I've heard a million times and it never gets old. This is Jason Koger. He is a bilateral amputee, and I'm going to let you say what you're the world's first in.
I was the first person in the world with multi-articulating bionic hands.
Can you show the crowd your multi-articulating bionic hands?
So basically what that means is that there's 6 motors in the hand, and you can stall them out, and they all move independently. So bionic hands is actually, or myoelectric is electric, battery-powered prosthetics. They've been around since actually probably the late 70s or 80s, but they were literally, all they did was open and close. The thumb didn't move, and that's all it did was open and close. So in 2008, they came out with a hand that actually has a thumb that can move, rotate, and then it's got 6 motors in it. So that's why it's a multi-articulating
Gotcha.
bionic hand.
That's a handful, or mouthful.
Handful.
Punny.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. I know a little bit of background. So this series started back over the summer. I got caught in Kroger. Somebody said, nobody in Owensboro does anything cool. I said, that's a lie. And so we started a podcast to prove them wrong. And that's where we're at today. Thanks for coming on. We talked a little bit before we started recording, but I was actually I'm having memories of the day it happened. You were a little bit older than I was, but we went to the same church. I was in youth group with some family members of yours and all that. It's I remember this whole time period of when it all went down. It's just wild, right? I mean, obviously more for you,
Yep.
but kind of back up and tell us get us to where we are today.
Okay.
So
it is interesting. I hear people all the time say they remember where they were when I got hurt. Almost you think about 9/11. I think everybody, and my story's not as big as 9/11, but I'm just saying that
Sure.
when certain things happen, I remember exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. The first time the news came on, and I was in my fraternity house. Just got out of bed pretty much. And it's just crazy that whenever I talk to some people and they can tell me, it's man, I was standing next to so and so and it came across, and I've heard all those stories of where people were, and it's interesting that people still remember that. And whenever when you talk about I was electrocuted and I took 7,200 volts of electricity, and when you think about that, a lot of people don't live through that. You know what I mean? And then when you're in a small
a lot of people
hometown,
don't live through a lot less.
That's
I
right.
touched a 120 once, and that kind of hurt. But
Your beard shows it.
But you think about when something like that happens in a small hometown, it just and I will say, if this happened in Nashville, L.A., anywhere else, it probably wouldn't have been as big a deal. And I tell people all the time that Owensboro is, and I've seen it over and over and over, and I'm sure you all have too. When something happens in Owensboro, I don't care if you know people or don't know people, they rally together and they help. You know what I mean? And it's truly amazing, how people help each other in Owensboro. But
Sure.
So getting back to what your question was, kind of where I'm at today, and
Yeah. So for those who don't know, which you're living under a rock, but how'd you get electrocuted?
So March 1st, 2008, I was 29 years old, and I decided to go on a quick four-wheeler ride around my grandfather's farm. And been around this farm millions of times, and there was a down power line. And, I don't know why it was down. I don't know if anybody really knows. I think people assume, and they might think that they know, but we had an ice storm that year. We also had that wind storm that year. But regardless, the guide wire broke, and the pole was leaning, and I don't know if it had been down for a day or if it had been down for 2 months. Nobody really knows. But anyway, went on this quick ride and basically came in contact with a down power line, and people like they start thinking about 7,200 volts, and it's like really, what is 7,200? You know, it's actually more than an electric chair, which I know you're grounded different.
Wow.
But you know, you think about that, or if you think about, it was enough electricity that it shut my entire neighborhood down.
Wow.
So it's you know, and I tell the story all the time. Like things that I think of now that I didn't know obviously at that time. You know, my wife Jenny was actually working on a project on her computer, and I don't know if she ever hit that save button. And when the power went off, she lost all the work she'd been working on.
Oh man.
And you know
She
how
forgave
often,
you for that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know how often things like that happen, and you lose some work that you've been doing, and you get all mad and upset because you've been working on it so long, and you have no idea the reason of the power went off or the reason of whatever it was. I mean, you know, it could have been a car wreck. It was, you know, and in her instance, it was her husband dying a few hundred yards away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just before that phone call, it just, I mean, you just never know. And my outlook on life nowadays is just totally different. You know, I go to lunch, and if there's an older couple and you know they're retired and they're standing at the counter, it's like, I don't know if I want a cheeseburger or a hamburger or a chicken sandwich. And they think about it for a minute, and they're like, what about chicken nuggets? And then 45 minutes later, you know, you're in a hurry, and it's like, you don't know what those people's been through. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of different stuff now. But.
Yeah. So were you riding by yourself?
So I actually, I had 3 kids on the 4-wheeler with me.
Okay.
Went on that ride that day, and I was taking them on a quick ride. That's all I was going to do. And they didn't get in. They could have took exactly what I took if they'd touched me, you know.
Yeah.
My cousin was behind me when it happened, so he seen it too. And you know, from talking to him, he said it looked like 4th of July was basically coming off my body. So,
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. I'm trying to think. 2001. Were you guys carrying cell phones?
That was 2008.
2008.
Yep.
Sorry, 2008. So you probably.
Yeah, I think we had cell phones.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know we did because
Yeah.
I called. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was trying to think like emergency response and all that. Like, just the reaction time had to be pretty quick.
Absolutely, yeah.
So-
My cousin called his dad, my uncle, and my uncle got back there pretty quick because you know where we live, it's my house, and then next door is my uncle. Next door to that was my cousin. Next door to that's my other uncle. So we're all out there, you know, basically together. And it didn't take but one quick phone call, and then 911 was called, and you know, kind of went on.
So the initial shock of it was probably one thing for your family, but the recovery time, you know, that's not something you don't go home in 4 days from the hospital, right?
That's right.
So walk us through kind of like what life began to look like shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and you know, you think about before. I mean, I had no idea that I was going to be in this situation. You know what I mean? Like I knew when you get electrocuted, and I think it's really cool to kind of explain a little bit about when you get electrocuted to tell you kind of what I went through, right? Because everybody sees my story now that, you know, I'm a successful guy or, you know, smiling all the time or whatever. But so 7,200 volts of electricity, it has to come out of your body somewhere. It came out the bottom of my right foot. They found my tennis shoe 30 feet from where I was. It blew my tennis shoe off my body. My cousin said it looked like 4th of July was coming off of my body. And if you look at my clothes, I have looks like cigarette burn holes where sparks were literally coming out of my body. My whole right arm was 3rd-degree burns. And if you look at my shirt, the right sleeve is just shredded. It was half burnt and half melted to my arm, right? My left thumb, electricity came out of my left thumb, and I remember seeing my thumb, and it was literally like just barely hanging on with skin. I knew I was going to lose my thumb. And then it stopped my heart for 30 seconds, and whenever the power shut off, it was either enough jolt that started my heart back up, or I hit the ground hard enough for my heart to start back up. So, and you know, the feeling of it all, like I remember the vibration of every bone in my body vibrating, but the lights were like out.
Well, I was going to ask, like, from a consciousness standpoint, like, did you know what was going on?
Oh yeah, I know I was getting electrocuted. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you feel that vibration, and it was almost like a buzzing. Like if you were to hum, and you can almost feel that humming, that vibration in your head. You know what I mean? It felt like that through your whole body.
Wow.
And then as soon as I got done getting electrocuted, I felt like I was on fire. Literally, the doctor told me that your body feels like I forgot the temperature, but like literally on fire. You know what I mean? And that's why I was trying to climb down into the ditch to cool off, because I felt like I was on fire. And then I was loaded up into the ambulance, and Jenny made it down to where I was, and I told her, I said, I'm gonna lose my thumb. Like, I knew I was gonna lose my thumb, and but I kept on telling her. And sometimes when I try to tell my story, I always kind of leave this out because it's hard to kind of put in. But my grandfather lost his left arm at 29 years old, and I was 29. And he got hurt on the farm in front of my house. I was behind my house. He was the only amputee I'd ever seen, but he passed away 3 months before. So when I seen my thumb, I remember telling Jenny, I mean, Papa lost his entire arm. Like, a thumb ain't that big of a deal. You know what I mean? And I say that story like I was super calm, and I feel like I really wasn't in that much pain at that moment. I don't know if it was shock or whatever, but I just kept on repeating myself over and over and over. It's like, it's just my thumb, it's just my thumb. Got to Owensboro, and they decided they needed to get me out of there, because when you get electrocuted, it burns you from the inside out, and it causes poisonous toxins and blood inside your body. And like I said, my whole right arm was 3rd-degree burns, and that was being burnt from the inside out, right? Like, that ain't the outside in. So, it was kind of bubbled up, red and, black and blue and swollen, and which I didn't know that's what that was at the time. So I got to Owensboro, and they called Life Flight to go to a burn unit, and the only 2 options was Vanderbilt or Louisville. And Vanderbilt called back first, so I was put on a helicopter, and I remember getting rolled in. The helicopter I was in, I was on the PHI. It was yellow and black helicopter, and I remember my feet going in first, and my feet touching the front windshield of the helicopter. One pilot, and then I remember, so basically the bed is kind of to the left, and the pilot's more to the center, to the right type. So when they roll you in, feet to the front window, my head there was a nurse sat right behind me, and I was my head was laying in her lap looking straight up at her, and then there was a nurse to my right, and then all the equipment to keep you alive, and then my left shoulder was touching the window.
Wow.
I remember all that, and got up in the air, and I remember just, asking them, I was like, I don't even know why we're going to Nashville. Like, it's just my thumb, you know what I mean? And I'm telling you, that just kept on rolling through my head. And finally they said, everything's going to be okay. We need to go on and prep you, get you ready for surgery. And they stuck a needle on the side of my jugular vein. That's where they were going to put, medicine once I got to Vanderbilt. And then they cathed me. And, when I talk to little kids, elementary, middle school kids, I tell them I got cath. They're like, well, what is that? I'm like, well, it's where they drain your urine. I mean, that's the best way to explain it. And I think it was today or yesterday I did a speech, and I said that, and they kind of got laughing. I'm like, well, there's a point to it. So, once they cathed me, I remember seeing my urine going through the hose, and it looked like Dr. Pepper. It was that dark.
Wow.
And I had no idea what that was. But what that is the blood and poison going through your kidneys. My kidneys were shutting down. And that was the emergency, was my kidneys. They had to hurry up, figure out where the infection was, and get the infection out.
Yeah.
So, even though I didn't know what that was at the time, I remember landing in Vanderbilt, and I remember getting on the elevator and going down a couple floors, and I remember elevator opening up, and I remember going into a room that looked like a morgue, and that room was called Hydro. I didn't really know where I was at the time, but Hydro is where they take a pressure washer and they wash your dead skin off of you.
That's the part that gets me every time.
So they had to wash all my right arm skin pretty much off.
And that's painful.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't
You
remember.
don't remember?
I don't
Okay, good.
remember.
Sure, that's painful.
So I was awake for that, and the nurses. And a matter of fact, I flew to Orlando. I guess it was a week before last, and one of my nurses works at Southwest.
Okay.
And her name's Ree. So every time I go through Nashville, I stop at the desk and say hello to her or whatever. And she was the one that told me that as I was laying there and they were washing all this dead skin off of me, that I just continued to say, it's not that big of a deal. It's just my thumb, and making sure that everybody else was okay that was there.
Yeah.
And it's just like it really wasn't even about me at all. And she told me that I was super calm. And I was completely awake when I went through that surgery or washing or whatever you want to call it. And once my wife got there, she had to sign release forms to amputate or give me a blood transfusion. So once she got there, she signed the paperwork, and Dr. Guy told her and my mom and my dad did not want to go in. But if they wanted to go see me or say their goodbyes, because they didn't know really what was going to happen, that's the only opportunity they got.
Wow.
And Jenny and my mom suited up, and I don't remember any of this, but they walked in the room, and Jenny said I said a few things to her, and then they put me in a coma. But the medication that they gave me made me forget that whole process of the.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even though I was completely awake for it, I don't remember it because of the medicine they gave me to.
How far back? To the washing or to just
to the
that
washing.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember going into the room, and then that's about it. So I don't remember the pressure, the washing of my arms or any of that. But I was completely awake for all that whenever I was actually in there, and whatever medicine. I'm like, man, they might need to give me a prescription of that. I don't know. That's nice sometimes. Maybe forget stuff. I don't know, but anyway, very thankful that they did that. And then I was put into an induced coma for 3 days, and I went through, probably 10, 12 surgeries in 3 days of amputations. Just cut a little bit more and cut a little bit more, and basically they were waiting for my urine to straighten the colors, change, and then once that started happening, they quit amputating, and woke up 3 days later, and basically I remember waking up laying flat on my back because it actually I got two fractures. I had a fracture in my about the middle of my back and then up around my neck. So it was kind of funny because the doctor's like, "Did you break your back before your accident?" And I was like, "Not that I know of." And they said, "Well, you did at some point." And I'm like, "Maybe." But anyway, I had two fractures in my back. And so, I woke up laying flat, had no idea my hands were gone because I still feel them now, right?
Yeah.
I still feel my hands. And I remember asking for my mom and my dad to come in the room. And my dad came in the room, and I just remember looking at him and saying, "How bad is it?" And he told me, he said, I'll never forget exactly what he said. He said, "I don't know how we'll ever get through this, but we've always had faith, and we will get through it one way or another. But they had to amputate both of your arms in order to save your life." And I think, you take that, everybody's like, "Well, what'd you think it right off the bat?" And I'm like, I don't remember, but I imagine everything was going through my mind.
Yeah.
You think about living a life for 29 years with hands, being able to do everything, to how am I going to provide for my family? I had two little girls at the time, and Billy Grace was 21 months old and Campbell was 3 months old, so how am I going to take care of them? Jenny my wife was 28 years old. Is she going to roll out? It'd be a lot easier for her to say, "I'm done," you know what I mean? And she didn't sign up for that kind of lifestyle, and she didn't. And then, you think about how you're going to pay for house payments and, food on the table, dressing yourself, using the bathroom. Dude, I could talk for 2 hours about the things you're probably thinking about,
Yeah.
The things we take for granted.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, I take for granted now. Like, it's crazy. Like, every now and then I'll get inside my pocket and I want to get some change out of my pocket. And I start thinking, I was like, man, isn't it amazing how God created us to be able to put our hand in our pocket and feel a penny or a quarter or a dime. You know what I mean? Without even looking at it, just the feeling of whatever object it is, and knowing in your mind that's silk or cotton or, and I can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? And I still remember the way it used to feel is the crazy part. Like I remember how to put a nut on a boat. You know what I mean? And using one finger and your thumb, and the way your finger and thumb bends, and it's like, man, it's just crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, people look at me like I'm eating now with 2 prosthetics, and I don't even think about it anymore. So I mean, I'm starting to get to where I even take that for granted now.
And we have one of your first ever. Is this one you made?
I did.
With the fork on it?
Yep. Well, the one with the fork on it behind me is I told somebody how to make it. Okay. But I had one that was a leg brace that I stuck my residual limb in, and I had a fork duct taped to the end of it. And whenever I leaned forward, the knee pivot would bend and would get closer to my mouth, and I would eat, and then it was spring loaded to go back. And then I finally got to the point I got tired of taping and untaping so many times that I had a friend make that where you could unscrew the fork and put a knife, fork, spoon, and that's how I started feeding myself.
I think that is like the testament to your character, and that you were going to persevere no matter what through this, and that you weren't going to let it stop you. It wasn't going to get in the way of anything. Like, I think if anything, that shows kind of a peek into your character a little bit, that, you know, I'm going to eat on my own, dang it, and I'm going to hit my knee against the table, whatever I got to do it.
Yep.
Well, and so that's kind of where my next question comes from, is like, so tell me about that mindset, because I imagine it wasn't the day after you came home from the hospital, right? There was some time in between to where you dealt with stuff that frustrated you, and, you know, what led to thinking, I'm going to build something so I can feed myself?
Yep. Laying in that hospital room, the very first day that I was actually awake and knew what was kind of going on, besides what Dad told me, Dr. Guy came in the room. It's the first time I ever met him. Jeffrey Guy's his name, and he come in there, sat down with me, and he's like, "Hey, Jason, you're going to be in the hospital for several months," and he said, I want you to think about one goal that you have, make sure it's realistic, and I want to help you reach this goal." And he said, once you do that, I think you'll understand that it's kind of like baby steps, you know what I mean? And he told me over and over, make sure it's realistic. And I remember telling him, I was like, man, I don't know how I'll ever do, you know, some of this stuff, like, you know, feeding myself, dress myself, whatever. And I said, but there's one thing I have to be able to do, and I have to be able to hold my kids again. That's all I care about. The next day, Dr. Guy came in. I talked him into unplugging me from feeding tubes and catheters and heart monitors and all that stuff. And I went to the waiting room and I held my kids for the first time. And I truly think that day is what was like that switch that I did the first thing that I wanted to do, and I reached that goal. And I told him that if I could do that, everything else would just be a bonus, you know? And I literally started living my life as I already did the most important thing that I could possibly do, and everything else that I figure out is going to be a bonus, you know what I mean? And I think that I think I started seeing things that a lot of people don't see. I think a lot of people, they automatically look at it's all about me, and you know, I need you to help me do this and that. And I was totally different. I don't want anybody doing nothing for me. I didn't want Jenny to have to give me a bath. I knew she was going to have to for a little bit. I didn't want Jenny to feed me. I didn't want Jenny to dress me. I didn't want any of that. I've met several amputees that were super excited. It's like, man, I can't wait, dude. I'm just going to sit back and let somebody feed me and give me a bath. And you know what I mean? And it's just that mindset that it's not what I wanted. And I think in the background, I was also thinking about it's not fair for my wife to have to feed my 21-month-old and then feed my 3-month-old and then feed me and then feed herself, like, you know, exhausting. And there for a long time, Jenny was my nurse instead of my wife, you know. And I just seen all this stuff, and I didn't want it anyway. So I think, you know, I had the engineering background and always been around the outdoors and like, you know, farming type, country boy, construction. And my mindset was just like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And then in the hospital, I started figuring out like that thing to feed myself. And I don't want people thinking like I did it that one day and then from then on, you know, I didn't have to have any help whatsoever. I mean, I got pictures of me at home where maybe that didn't work or my arm was hurting for whatever reason. I got pictures of Billy Grace feeding me. You know what I mean? She was 21 months old, and I mean my family really just come together as one, and we, you know, even still today it's crazy because I couldn't get change out of my pockets, and there's times that I'll reach in to get change out of my pocket, and you know Billy and Campbell's, you know, one of them's in college now. They'll reach in my pocket and grab my change out because they used to do it when they were 21 months old because I couldn't. But then I start thinking, you know, actually yesterday when I did my speech, and Drew knows the story because I was actually in this room. I was asked to do a podcast, and I called him. I was like, "Can I use your room? I got to do a podcast with this guy." And who is it?
This guy.
Marcus Luttrell.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so anyway, I was on the podcast with Marcus Luttrell. You know, he was. They did the movie Lone Survivor, and he and I are actually working together now, doing some speeches and stuff. And he called me. I think it was the day before yesterday, and maybe a couple of days ago. And I was fixing to do this speech, and I got thinking when I hung the phone up with him, and it was kind of funny. I'll tell you this. There's a bilateral arm conference going on in Houston in October. And he lives in Houston. I said, "Hey, are you going to be around? I got to go to this conference." And he's, "What kind of conference?" And I said, "Oh, it's for bilateral arm amputees. You know, you got to have at least lost both your arms to go to this conference." And he just sat there for a minute and he said, "Man, yesterday I was complaining about a hangnail that I got, and you're talking about." And so anyway, I got thinking that night about, you know, Marcus Luttrell and the movie. And, you know, it was one of my favorite movies. I love watching documentaries. I love watching true real life stories, and you know, start thinking back to Marcus, and you know, there was 20 people from the helicopter and from the people who was on the ground with Marcus. There was a total of 20 people that went on that mission, and one survivor. 19 of them passed, right? And I started looking at Marcus's injuries, and I mean, he had this shrapnel all over his body from a grenade and bullet holes and cuts and bruises and falling off a mountain, and you know, his pelvis was shattered and broken back in a couple places, and I didn't even know this, but did you know that he crawled 7 miles?
Yeah, so I saw him speak at the University of Houston when I used to live down there, and he told that story, and I was just like, what?
7 miles. He crawled. I can't walk 7 miles.
Through enemy territory.
Yeah.
Yes.
I read the book, and the book is really good, better than the movie, but because it gives you that detail. You're like, you know, my God.
7 miles.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, like, when I watched that movie, that came out in 2014. When I watched that movie, I had my hands, and I'm sure I watched it, and I was like, that's crazy. Glad it wasn't me. It's never going to be me. You know, like, I got my plans, my life's figured out. And then I went through what I went through, and it's like, you know, and Marcus and I talked about it a little bit before. It's like, how'd you get through it? You know, because I look at his story. He looks at my story like mine is way worse than his, and I look at his like his is way worse than mine, and I'm like, how did we do that? Like, you know, how did we do this? And he told me, he's like, "Dude, I know you've always had faith, and that's the only answer. You just got to have that faith and that mindset that you're gonna do it, and that's all you can do. You know, you just got to set it and move on." And you know, at church this past weekend, you know, they sang the song "The Good Plan," and you know, the preacher was preaching about it, and he's like, you know, even in the darkest times, God's still got a good, great plan for you. You know.
Well, so speaking of plans and like where you are today, I'm sure you weren't sitting at home with your contraption thinking, I'm going to start giving speeches about making contraptions? Like, how did this kind of organically come to be? You know, you remember the first talk you gave?
I'm sure it was local at a school. I'm sure of it.
I've done a lot of those.
A lot of them. So I think really what got it is, I was looking at these Bionic hands, and I wanted them, and it took me a long time to get them because of insurance and stuff, and I finally got accepted to get the Bionic hands, and I was the first in the world with it. And when you're the first in the world about anything, you're going to be in the news. And, I was in the news all the time. I was in a newspaper, local, and then that eventually got on CNN. And then, from CNN, my story started spreading, and people started calling, and especially local, like, hey, we want you to come share your story. And the funny part is, I graduated from Murray State University with an engineering degree, and I failed public speaking. So I'm like, sure, I'll go talk. And obviously, man, the first time it was hard to swallow, think. I was like nervous, sweating, my hands were sweating, and I didn't even have hands. So they
that's the clip. That's how we're promoing this one.
But I started sharing my story, and I feel like even though I was really nervous about it all, I needed to share a story because this is a story God gave me to share. And ever since then, I was like, it ain't about me or my story. It's really His story that He wants me to share. And it's been interesting because I've met people that don't believe and come up to me. This one person came up to me one time and said, I don't know how you got through it. And I told them, you just got to have faith. And they said, yeah, but we know the stories of did God really walk on the water? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, did He really? What? Do you got any pictures or video of it? And, no, but it's in the Bible. It's like, yeah, but who wrote the Bible? You know what I mean? And it started to make me think. It's like, some of these people really don't believe, and I think that's why sometimes we go through things or we have our own testimonies is to show some of those people that don't believe that I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for my faith. And then maybe that will transition to believing those stories that are unbelievable, So that's kind of how my speaking started. And then, to advertise, and I'm not a marketing person, but you tell somebody, first person in the world, Bionic hands, you ain't even got to put a name to it then. People want to come see it. And then I got asked to do an episode on Hawaii 5-0. And
I remember that.
I've done Dr. Gupta CNN, and I've been on Good Day Philadelphia. I've been on Apple commercial and a MetLife commercial. I just did an Advent Health commercial in Orlando, and I did a movie with Matthew McConaughey, and I've been in the Associated Press and some magazines and some hunting videos and several podcasts.
I've seen a lot of clips of stuff you've done, and the hunting video to me is like, you're a great shot. Like still, wow.
Yep. And I tell my daughters that they can't find fingerprints, so their boyfriends better be good guys. But so, I think when they started telling the story, I was like, hey, we got this guy that's been on whatever, Hawaii 5-0, this and that. It automatically brought, a few
Were you
people.
a bad guy on that episode?
I was.
Yeah.
I killed a bunch of people, and they couldn't find my fingerprints.
And you also got to meet the biggest star of the 80s.
Yep, Peter Weller.
There you go.
RoboCop.
RoboCop, man.
And I tell that story, and everybody's like, I ain't never heard of RoboCop. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man.
I loved RoboCop when I was a kid.
So, yeah, he and I, we worked together for 2.5 weeks became really good friends. And he actually flew me to Chicago, I don't know, about a month ago. He was signing autographs down there at a Comic-Con, and I got down there, and him and Nancy was there too, on RoboCop, the girlfriend or whatever, and wife, whatever she was and got to meet her. But everybody's in there paying $100 to take pictures with him and all this stuff, and I'm just chilling with him, and then
that's great.
He had a professional photographer taking pictures, and he was like, "Come here, Jason, we're going to take a couple pictures." And one of them was just me and him standing by each other, and then one of them was him kissing me on the cheek, and one of them was me, him, and Nancy. And he autographed all of them. I've never asked him for an autograph, but he autographed all those. And the one where he's kissing me on the cheek, he's like, Jenny, I know that he loves you more than me, but he still loves me too, or something. And, he just tried to write something funny. But, yeah, man, we became really good friends. And, what blows me away about him and the story, and I'm very humble when I talk about stuff because I don't want people thinking that I'm better than them or, I've had opportunities to meet these celebrities, so now I'm cool. But Peter Weller flew to Owensboro, and I asked him, why'd you come to Owensboro? And he said, I needed to surround myself with people you surround yourself with. And it hit me in a way is like, that dude can call just about anybody he wants, famous, millionaires, whatever, all kinds of people he could call. And instead, he came to Owensboro, Kentucky to surround himself with people that I surround myself with. And it really hit me that, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, how many Facebook likes we got or how rich we are or poor we are or who we know, who we don't know. Like, we all need each other, you know what I mean? And it's all about your character at the end of the day and what you can bring to somebody else and how you can better somebody else. And here I am, an old country boy from Owensboro, Kentucky, that obviously Peter Weller thinks that he can benefit from being my friend. You know what I mean? And I used to be that person too, to envy these stars or celebrities or whatever. And it's still, I see somebody that I'm like, man, that'd be a cool dude to meet because you see a story and you see his character. But it used to be, I want to meet them because they're famous. And now it's like, man, that person just like us,
So as this kind of unfolded over the years, I mean, you've learned a lot along the way, I'm sure. Is there like one bit of advice that so you could go back in time a little, like coming home from the hospital? Like, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Man, just knowing the future of what I was going to be able to do because there were so many uncertainties. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do this. I'm going to try, but I don't know if this will ever happen. And then feeling like I was the only person in the world with an upper limb amputee. I'd never met anybody that lost an arm except for my grandfather. Never met anybody, never seen anybody, and I just felt like I was alone. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to be a mentor to people. And, man, my phone, social media is unbelievable. And I tell people all the time, we go back to telling, it doesn't matter how many likes, you got on social media and all that stuff. But I wish that my story would get to every single household in the United States so that if somebody needed somebody like me, they could find me. And it's just like last night, TikTok. I had a message last night on TikTok. This guy is the wife. Her name was Jamie. Hey, my husband got bacterial meningitis. They've already amputated both his legs, fixing to amputate his arms in the next month. Can I talk to you? And I was like, sure, send me your number. Send me her number. She was in Ohio. Called her last night, talked for an hour and a half. Man, that has happened on every platform that I've had, Instagram, YouTube's, whatever. And it's like, man, I wish that everybody that needed me could make sure they found my stuff. You know what I mean? And I think that's why I put stuff on social media. It's not because, hey, I want you to like me and follow me and forget about it. It's those stories and those people that need me and me reaching out to them, and that's happened, I'm telling you, all over the world,
How much does that book help with that?
For me or for them?
Yeah, both.
That book helped me a lot when I wrote it because of hearing the stories from, what Jenny felt when I was sitting there in a coma for 3 days, or how her and my mom, dad, sister, how they talked every day about how we're going to explain this to him whenever he wakes up, or, how's he going to take the news? Is he going to be, angry, mad, suicidal? I mean, who knows? And so to hear her stories, and then, Dr. Guy, I went down and interviewed Dr. Guy, and he had never told me these stories. And he sat in an office, and he told me, he said, I'm going to tell this story one time, and that's it. And he's like, it's very emotional for him too, and because he didn't, and I don't know why. Maybe he thought that, hey, this kid's just going to lose his arms, and then, man, his life's going to be horrible the rest of his life. And and then for me to be like, I'm the type of guy, I was like, man, you got the wrong person if that's what you think. You know what I mean? And so I think for him telling me the stories of what I went through really hit home, because I didn't even really understand what I went through. You know what I mean? Like how bad it really was. So the book really helped me to understand really what I went through and the faith that I had and kind of where I am today. But for others, I think that it gives them hope, you know.
Super
and
relatable.
yeah, I mean, you know, they can see, even if it's not an amputation, they can see that they went through something awful and that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, I tell people all the time, my favorite verse is John 13:7, and, you know, God says, you may not understand what I'm doing now, but one day you will. And, man, that gives me hope to knowing that, just like my dad told me from the very beginning, he's like, I don't know how we're going to get through this, but I know we will. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that uncertainty for some people is what gets them. That's what makes them give up or quit, is because it's too uncertain on what's going to happen, you know. And really, you just got to sit back and have the faith that it's going to work out. It's just, I don't know when or how, but it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
So where's it go from here? Like, what's next for Jason?
Man, I don't know. I think I'm the kind of person that every opportunity I can get to share my story, I'm willing to do it. Whether that's doing a speech, going to a school. I did 2 schools yesterday. I went to College View Middle School this morning and did FCA. Last week I got asked to do Apollo FCA. I only had 7 minutes. I'm like, man, I can barely get my name out in 7 minutes. But, you know, TV, just sharing my story. Mm-hmm. I actually did a podcast with John O'Leary, and they're fixing to come out with a movie on with him in, I think, December or January. It's called Man on Fire, I think is what the name of the movie's going to be. But he's in St. Louis, and, you know, I mean, if I ever had an opportunity to share my story on a big screen or a small screen or a speaking or I don't know. But I know that whenever opportunities open up, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. And, you know, I've always been really inspired by, like, Inky Johnson and the way he shares his story and his faith. And I don't know, man. I just hope the platform keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I don't say that in the fact of saying I want it to get bigger so I can make more money or get bigger so I can have more followers or whatever. I just want to be able to. I truly want to be able to share the story that God gave me.
That's awesome. I have questions I want to ask that aren't so deep. So, do you have anything you want to ask?
I just want to, and I've been trying to say this to all of our guests, and especially mean it for you. You're obviously crushing it. You've overcome so much in your life, and I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of what you're doing and the message you're spreading in Owensboro and the faith you're sharing in Owensboro. And, you know, I really appreciate everything you do for even these little kids in school. You know, it's from little kids all the way up to the adults like me. You know, you're inspiring everybody and you're crushing it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I remember the first time my 12-year-old saw you. He wasn't 12. It was a couple of years ago. He was like, this guy with no arms came to school. I was like, I know him. So because we're on camera, I think people want to see you do cool things.
Yeah.
Do you have tricks?
I do. So this hand, I have wrist rotators. I'm the only one in probably Owensboro, Kentucky that can do that.
I guarantee it.
So.
This hand has a Apple app with it. So basically, if I am parallel to the ground, I can't be in the air. I got to be level, parallel with the ground, and I hold open. And when the finger twitches and I barely pull back, it'll go into different grips. And that is all done by an Apple app. So it's basically my hand knows where it is in space at all times. So here's to the left. So I can go left, right, backwards, or forwards, and it goes into different grips, which I can switch with an Apple app. And that's why I did an Apple commercial.
Okay. But you're controlling this with, like, your brain, right?
Yep,
like,
kind of, somewhat.
Okay.
So I got an on-off switch. Basically, I just turn it on, turn it off. That's where the battery is. So I take the arms off at nighttime. So I have a sensor laying on my muscles underneath my socket external. Okay. Most people think everything's internal, but
plugged in.
It's so I have a device, a sensor laying on top of my muscle. So when I feel like my hand goes up like this, that's what opens it. When I feel like my hand goes down, that's what closes it. And then when I co-contract, I feel like my pinky flicks out. You hear that beep. That beep tells me that I'm in, and I don't have to listen for the beep anymore, but I'm in rotate now. So I lower my wrist or raise my wrist, and then co-contract, I'm back in open and close.
That's so fascinating.
So well, you weren't in here, but I was like, I had like a little tickle, and he's like, "You want a cough drop?" And he just like reaches in his pocket, and I was like, "What is happening?"
Now I've been talking to some doctors in Texas, and they are working on internal stuff. And
is that more accurate or quicker?
I don't know, but I think that if it's safe and whatever else, I think I'll probably be one of the first to do it.
I was going to ask you, how many times do you want to be the first?
Dude, not every time. I'm ready. But they've talked to me already about basically making a small incision and putting a half of a piece of rice, the size of a half of a piece of rice, on all my nerves internally. And temporary for like a month or two, there would literally be cables coming out of my arm, and the cables would hook up to the hand externally, but the sensors would be internally. So I wouldn't be able to get wet, or take a bath, but swimming and all that. I wouldn't be able to do that for a while. And then when I feel like I raise one finger, it would open one finger, two fingers, or whatever. And then after testing for a month or two or whatever this is going to be, then making those pieces of rice Bluetooth compatible, sewing me up, and then it would be, Bluetooth to the hand is what they're working on. Whether that I'll see that this year or in 10 years, I don't know. Or if it works or don't work, who knows either. But that's just the future of what's going to be a possibility. And not only just being able to control one finger or two fingers, it would also be having sensation. And I don't know what sensation means to him, whether that means hot and cold or if that means silk and cotton or what that is, but there will be sensory feedback of some sort. So
unreal. That's so unreal. I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
So if you see a guy in Owensboro, Kentucky walking around with wires hanging out his arm, don't be off guard.
Just in time for Halloween. Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned earlier that I've known Jenny a long time too. So Jenny was your wife, then your nurse, your wife again. She your manager now? Is she like?
She don't want to be a manager. She can barely keep up with where I'm at, and I can barely keep up with where I'm at right now. So I've talked about Marcus Luttrell. Marcus Luttrell has a speaking bureau. It's called Team Never Quit.
Yeah.
So Team Never Quit is handpicked by him on who is on his team, and I am one of his
very cool
guys on his team. Awesome. I have somebody that takes care of finding us speeches. Now that's not. If somebody in Owensboro wants me to speak, I don't want them to have to call Marcus.
Well, I was about to say, I just texted you. Like, should I have gone through?
No.
Is that relatively new?
For about a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm in on that, and then and it helps me too if somebody calls and I'm like, hey, I'd rather them take care of all the logistics, so I kind of send it to them. But I'm still willing to do stuff local. You know what I mean? But it just helps the out of town type stuff. So that kind of takes care of that. And then Oster, which is the Bionic hand company, they take care of all my stuff when I go to do shows for amputee stuff, or if I go do speeches for them or anything I do with them. They're based out of California, and they got a place in Ohio and in Orlando. But then their main headquarters is in Iceland, and then the engineers are in Scotland. So if I work with the engineers, it's from Scotland, whether we're on Zoom or they'll fly into the States and see me. We'll meet up somewhere. Iceland, same thing. But eventually, I'll be going to Iceland and Scotland.
Cool.
But I have a girl I've been working with for.
I hear Reykjavik is very nice.
Oh yeah. I've been working with a girl since probably 2009, 10 with Oser, which she was with Touch Bionics, which was this company before Oser bought them out. And she's from Rhode Island, and her name's Nikki, and she's Italian, and she takes care of me like a mom. Mm-hmm. She'll usually find out where I'm going and find the flights and the rooms, and
wow.
She wants me to go to everything with her, but her number one thing is, does this interfere with family stuff at all? Because if it does, we'll change what you got going. She's really big on family, but man, you go out and eat with her. Dude, you don't go hungry. I promise you, man. You go eat with an Italian girl. Woo, she buying everything. She getting it all, dude. You're getting a little bit of everything that they have.
So you mentioned family time, and I know when we talked a few months ago, you were told you might not have any more kids, right?
Yep.
And you proved that one wrong too.
I proved that wrong too. Yep. I got a little boy now, and Axel is 14.
Yeah.
So, and it's been really cool because I feel like the first couple of years that, Bill and Campbell didn't get all the attention that they should have got from me, right? Because I'm still trying to learn how to, be me again and eat and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I missed out on some of their stuff. But then I was a lot better when Axel came through. So when I tell my stories, I leave Axel out a lot because he wasn't around when it happened. But then now, I think Axel's probably had a little bit more time with me as a kid. But, it's just like people wouldn't know, but, Axel plays baseball.
Well, that's where I was going next. You coach a lot of baseball, right?
I coach, but I throw baseballs. We go.
Softballs.
Yeah, I got a little attachment up there, but me and Axel goes to the batting cage, and he's playing football right now, so we haven't hit in about a month together. But I just told him the other day, I was like, dude, we need to go down to the cage and hit. He's like, yeah, but he said, it's football season. I said, yeah, but it ain't about going down there and practicing. Like, dude, that's something me and you do together. Just me throwing the ball to you and kind of chit-chatting while we're doing it, man. That's the cool part. But, yeah, I can throw baseballs with him, and sometimes I don't get out of the way. He hit one the other day, man. He can smoke the ball now. He hit me right in the butt cheek. And, woo, it hurt, It's like, man, I got to pay a little bit more attention. But
so I got to know, do you have like a two-seam fastball and a slider?
I went somewhere. I just did a podcast last week with a guy he was played in the major leagues for the Detroit Tigers. And I told him I got a nasty curveball. It's like, man, it comes in just like spinning all the way. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
And Murray State University, you think about their success last year on a small little school. The year before that, they had me come in and speak to the whole team, and Axel got that. They wanted me to throw the first pitch out.
Well, that's why they made the College World
Series. That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly why. But Axel had to throw the first pitch out. You know what I mean? But
they ought to have you back every year.
Yeah, I know it. I need to go back for sure. So.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy dude, and I think this is a really cool story. I'm happy that we get to highlight it on this because you are absolutely crushing it, right? And that's the whole idea. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience?
Yeah, maybe let us know your socials. So
how do we find you, first of all?
I got a website. It's just jasonkoger.com, KOGER.com, jasonkoger.com. I'm on Instagram. I think it's jkoger84. I need to know that, don't I?
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook. I know it's Jason Koger Official. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. A lot of people can Google and find something out about me. And I think the biggest thing is when people see me, out, and I want them to come talk to me. You know what I mean? A lot of parents, their kids like, hey, look at that, and they're already putting their hand over their mouth, and it's like, hey, just come say hello, and let's do a handshake and talk or whatever, and anybody that ever needs me, like I'm here for anybody, and that's what I love to do is being a mentor, and I'm very thankful for where I come from in Owensboro. I think that my story could probably be totally different if it wasn't for the people in Owensboro. And I truly tell people that this is one of the best places that I feel like you can live. And my success has been a choice that I made, but it's also been because of the people that I've surrounded myself with, people, in this community, and all the people that I didn't even know that were patting me on the back and telling me I was doing a good job, and encouraged me and giving me those reviews or talks on social media on, hey, you're doing good, you're doing this. Like, every bit of that pushed me to be who I am today. So very thankful for the people in this community, because I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't, obviously, number one was my faith, but and then my family, but this community had a huge part of my success and the things I get to do. And, if this ever made some kind of a movie, that would be a huge highlight of where I'm from.
Who should play you in a movie?
I don't know. Who's a good-looking guy? He'd probably have to be an ugly guy. Will Ferrell, probably, or somebody weird.
Don't shade at Will Ferrell. Oh, man. I was thinking Pedro Pascal. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I ain't never thought about that yet. I'd have to let them figure that one
You're
out.
probably saying, I'll play myself, man.
Yeah, I would.
It'd be the best.
So, but, I'm very thankful for, being on the podcast, sharing my story every way I can.